So we'll start with Culture Personality School. Okay. The basic idea of this school is that culture and personality, they are interlinked with each other, and personality of an individual or a group is a reflection of culture. Okay. So if you want to study the culture, just look into the personality of the group members and you will be able to understand the culture. Okay. So now this school actually was influenced by father of psychology, that is Sigmund Freud, and that's why it is also called as psychological anthropology as well. Okay. It's the beginning of psychological anthropology. So Sigmund Freud ने क्या idea दिया था? Sigmund Freud said that the childhood experience of an individual, they shape the adult personality. So whatever we are, basically the way we behave, the way we are, basically depends upon our childhood experiences, whatever experiences that we have seen in our life. Okay, so if somebody has been loved, cared, or hugged so much in their childhood, so they will develop a warm personality. And if somebody has been experiencing childhood trauma and conflict in their family, or tension in their family, or around themselves, so they will develop a personality that will be reflecting their childhood experience. Okay, this is what. So he says that, just to highlight this point, because although it's not related to this theory, but you will require this in understanding the idea of incest taboo that was given by Sigmund Freud. तो उन्होंने बोला कि love is disconnected from sex. Okay, love and sex का दोनों से कोई relation नहीं है, because what we learn, or the person from whom we learn love, we cannot have sex with them. Okay, that is, we get love from parents, but can we have sex? No, we do not have, we cannot. So यहाँ पे he divides, he says that our mind is made up of three components, or three part: id, ego and superego. ये थोड़ा सा important है, ये समझना, and it will help you. Id, ego and superego. Id part of our brain, it basically works on leisure principle. And he says that we have been, or we actually are basically innately designed to work with leisure principle. मतलब we always look for leisure, हमें comfort जहाँ मिलेगा हम वही करना चाहते हैं. हम हमारी tendency, inherent tendency है to go for comfort, or to work in our comfort zone. We actually hate discipline. We actually hate some kind of hard work, thinking out of the box. It's very difficult for us. So that is, id part of the brain actually works on leisure principle. Okay, it always seeks leisure, it always seeks comfort. Now superego part of our brain basically seeks rules, norms, discipline. So basically this is more focused towards discipline, the regulated life. जैसे आर्मी वालों, इतने बजे उठना है, on rules, regulations, ये सब follow करना. Then it says the third part, that is ego, that's a combination, or it's a mixture of both id and superego. That is where it actually wants to seek leisure, but under regulation, not beyond that. So what actually happens, childhood experiences के बारे में ये बता रहे हैं, that in our childhood we are basically trained to suppress our id part. Okay, if what happens, if everybody works as per their leisure principle, in that case the society will be in a chaotic condition. अब हर किसी को जो अच्छा लग रहा है वो कर रहा है, कोई स्कूल नहीं जाएगा, or somebody finds happiness in destroying something, so they will do that. They will overeat, they will maintain not maintain cleanliness. So our childhood training basically is to suppress the id part of our brain, so that we work as per the rules, norms of the culture. Okay? So this is what he is trying to say, Sigmund Freud. कि childhood experiences shape our adult personality, हमारे जो बचपन की experiences है. तो उन्होंने बहुत सारी टाइप की ट्रेनिंग्स बताई, ओरल ट्रेनिंग एंड सेक्सुअल ट्रेनिंग और फेलिक ट्रेनिंग एंड ऑल दैट ट्रेनिंग, बट दैट्स नॉट ऑफ आवर कंसर्न राइट नाउ. बस जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड दिस दैट सिगमंड फ्रॉइड वाज द वन जिससे इन्फ्लुएंस हुआ कल्चर पर्सनालिटीज. ओके, नाउ व्हाट दे वांटेड टू अंडरस्टैंड द इंटरैक्शन बिटवीन culture and personality, how culture and personality actually interact with each other. Okay, what shapes other, or does culture shape personality, does personality shape culture, or some other relation. So based on this, it is divided into 3 sub schools or 3 approaches. Actually in most of the notes या जो भी देखोगे, in fact in my notes also you will find that it has been written that 3 approaches हैं. One is personality impacts culture, the other says culture impacts personality, and the third is personality and culture are interrelated with each other. However, I will just modify this. तो आप यहाँ पे personality impacting culture की जगह आप ये लिखना the idea of configuration of culture, configuration and pattern of culture by Benedict. Why I'll tell you, because उपाध्याय पांडे और इन सब बुक्स में personality impacting culture लिखा हुआ है, which is not completely correct, and that's why I asked you to modify this. So this was the idea that was given by Ruth Benedict. The second is culture determinism or culture impacting personality by Margaret Mead. And the third one is culture and personality are interrelated and intertwined, both impacting each other. That is Linton, Gardiner, and Cora Dubois. So these are the 3 approaches. First one is the approach of pattern of culture and configuration of culture, that was by Benedict. Then approach of culture determinism, culture determining personality by Mead. And third is the approach that is culture and personality are interrelated and intertwined with each other. That is Linton, Ralph Linton, Abraham Cardino, and Cora Dubois. Okay, now let's see the first column. Ruth Benedict. Okay, so Ruth Benedict was a student of Franz Boas. Okay, and being a student of Franz Boas, she conducted her PhD among Native Americans and wrote her thesis called as concept of guardian spirit in North America. Okay, so here in this case, what she found that there is North American native tribes जिनमें एक concept है और जिनमें एक belief है, that is there is a guardian spirit. Okay, they believe in the existence of guardian spirit. They believe that guardian spirit is present everywhere, and they are completely submissive to that guardian spirit. So much so that every element of their culture pays respect, honor to the guardian spirit. चाहे वो शादी की बात हो, चाहे वो funeral की बात हो, चाहे वो food की बात हो, चाहे वो economy की बात हो, चाहे वो polity की बात हो. Everywhere you will find that the guardian spirit has been respected and honored. So what she was actually explaining here, that guardian spirit का idea सारे cultural trait में spread हो रखा है, and this idea of guardian spirit is the one that is uniting all the cultural traits. Okay, so this guardian spirit is expressed in all cultural traits and unites them. Okay, so this is what Ruth Benedict actually highlighted in her PhD. Now, during this time only, she was also influenced by the idea of Gestalt psychology. Now, what is Gestalt? If you remember, we have talked about this in structuralism. Gestalt क्या बोलता है कि our thought is patterned and we see the things as whole rather than in parts. The best summary of this Gestalt psychology is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Sorry, and whole is different from the sum of its parts. Okay, so we see the thing as whole, not rather the combination of different parts. Yahan, so she was influenced by this Gestalt, and that's why in her book Patterns of Culture, you will find the use of or utility of Gestalt. अब कैसे? Just listen first and then I'll dictate some short note जो लोग पहली बार सुन रहे हैं. तो Patterns of Culture में उन्होंने क्या बताया? That culture is divided into smaller parts, smaller units, that is traits. ठीक है? So traits are just like atoms, small indivisible unit of the culture. Small traits. Okay, and these traits combine together to make what is called as complexes. Okay, and these traits and complexes unite together to make a functional whole, which is called as pattern. ठीक है? Pattern. That means these traits and complexes, they are not a random collection. ये trait उठा लिया, वो trait उठा लिया, कुछ नहीं. It's not a random collection, but rather they are arranged with respect to each other in a proper, well-defined manner. And that well-defined manner of arrangement of traits and complexes with respect to each other is called as the pattern. How one trait and complex is arranged with respect to another. Okay, now multiple patterns of the culture in different, say, religious pattern, economic pattern, social pattern, political pattern, multiple patterns integrate together to give what is called as the grand design of the culture, which is called as configuration. Okay, overall design of the culture is called as the configuration. So for example, take this building. एक ये जो बिल्डिंग है बड़ी, ये आप समझ लो कि ये एक ओवरऑल जो आप बाहर देख रहे हो, that is the configuration, the final product, that is the configuration. Now in this configuration, traits are say bricks or say cement or the paint or maybe some wires or small things. अब when I'm saying that if I give everything to you, या आपको थोड़े से ईंटें दे देता हूँ, थोड़ी सी sand, cement, everything, so is it equal to the building? No. This building is different from the raw material that has been used to create this building. Are you getting this? So these traits and complexes are the raw materials. But इस raw material को आप एक तरीके से arrange करोगे, only then this building will be created, right? So whole is different from the sum of its parts. Are you getting this statement? Now, when this cement, this bricks, this paint, they are arranged in one after another pattern. मतलब पहले आप बिल्डिंग क्रिएट करोगे, ओके, उसमें भी तरीका है कि पहले आप फाउंडेशन बनाओगे, फाउंडेशन बनाने के बाद देन आप सरिया यूज करोगे, उसके पिलर्स खड़े करोगे, पिलर्स खड़े करने के बाद देन यू विल इरेक्ट द वॉल्स, देन आफ्टर द वॉल्स आप उसकी छत बनाओगे, छत बनाने के बाद देन सेकंड फ्लोर, थर्ड फ्लोर एंड सो ऑन सो फोर्थ. Then once it is done, then you will be applying the paints. Okay, multiple floors will be created one after another, and then उसके बाद उसकी finishing होगी, and then finally at the end the grand design is created. One step after the other, multiple floors will be created. Means जो ground floor है उसका अलग design है, first floor है उसका थोड़ा सा अलग design है, second floor अलग classes हैं, अलग तरीके का है. Multiple patterns coming together and creating the final existential product. Okay, that is the configuration. और आप जैसे कि आप कोई इलेक्ट्रॉनिक प्रोडक्ट ले लो, तो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक प्रोडक्ट का जो फाइनल मतलब अल्टीमेट ट्रेट कॉम्प्लेक्स, जैसे कोबाल्ट है, और से प्लास्टिक है, मे बी सिलिकॉन है. बट इफ आई गिव यू ऑल द एलिमेंट्स, कैन यू मेक मोबाइल फोन? नो. अब उस एलिमेंट्स को लेके, जैसे कि आपको कोबाल्ट दिया, आपने उसको किसी तरीके से यूज किया, सिलिकॉन के साथ कंबाइन करके चिप्स क्रिएट किए. ओके, मदरबोर्ड, प्रोसेसर और समथिंग लाइक दैट. देन सम कॉपर वायर्स, यू टुक इट एंड you connected it with some other part of. So एक एक करके one after another several parts of that electronic system से computer was created and ultimately उन सबको एक साथ combine किया and then the final product that you are seeing, that is a laptop or a computer, that is the final configuration, final outcome of it. Are you getting this idea? So she's saying that traits, they combine to create what is called as complexes. And several traits and complexes, when they combine into a functional whole, this is called as the pattern. And multiple patterns, they integrate to create what is called as the grand design, what is called as the configuration. Now, related to the Gestalt, वो बोल रहा है कि हम लोग हमेशा होल में देखते हैं चीजों को. So what we see, what we learn in the form of culture is the whole culture rather than traits and complexes separated. ये छोटा यूनिट है. अभी आप मेरे से मेरे कल्चर की ट्रेट्स और कॉम्प्लेक्स पूछोगे, आई कैन नॉट मेंशन इट, बट आई नो द होल कल्चर. तो उन्होंने बोला कि इसीलिए आपके जो बिहेवियर्स हैं वो होल कल्चर से डिटरमाइन हो रहे हैं. लाइक सपोज इफ यू आर टोल्ड दैट यू शुड नॉट स्पीक इन द टेम्पल, ठीक है, आपको ये बताया गया कि पूजा करते समय या मंदिर में रहते समय आपको साइलेंस रखना चाहिए. सो ऑटोमेटिकली आप फ्यूनरल ग्राउंड पे भी साइलेंस रखोगे, आप गुरुद्वारे में भी जाओगे तो भी साइलेंस रखोगे. नॉट जस्ट टेम्पल, बट यू आर अप्लाइंग द सेम थिंग दैट यू वर टॉट इन अदर प्लेसेस इन सिंक विथ व्हाट यू आर एक्सपेक्टेड टू डू और व्हाट यू वर ट्रेन टू डू इन योर प्लेस ऑफ वर्शिप. जैसे कि एक हिंदू है, उसको ये बताया गया कि मंदिर में जाके भगवान के सामने माथा टेक देना चाहिए या चप्पल उतार के जाना चाहिए. Now when we as a Hindu or a Sikh we go to Goa and we go for some churches also, so out of the respect हम अपनी चप्पल उतार के अंदर चले जाते हैं और वहां पे जाके माथा टेक देते हैं. Okay, what is this? The application of the idea that was given to us with respect to place of worship, हमने उसी को extend कर दिया. Okay, we are not taught like कि चर्च में ऐसा करना है, वहां के लिए ऐसा करना है, like this. So this is just all, this is some basic idea with respect to or the pattern that was with respect to a particular area, say religious worship कैसे होनी चाहिए. So we have that pattern, we extend this pattern to other aspects. कहीं पे भी worship करने जाएंगे हम वही करेंगे. Even if we are told that कि चर्च में आप चप्पल पहन के जा सकते हो, लेकिन just because pattern हमारे यहाँ पे ऐसा बना हुआ है that if it is a place of worship, we should maintain the purity and hygiene of it. We should, so even if it is allowed, we'll make sure कि यार उतार के ही जाते हैं, क्या फर्क पड़ता है. और टेंडेंसी विल बी देयर टू गो डाउन टू टेक द ब्लेसिंग. तो हम वहां पे जाके कुछ नहीं, अगर इवन अगर साष्टांग प्रणाम नहीं भी कर रहे हैं तो भी वो जो चर्च के आगे जो बैरिकेड लगा होता है वहीं पे जाके माथा टेक ले, क्योंकि माथा टेकना तो बेसिकली इज द लार्जर पार्ट ऑफ द होल. ओके, दैट इज पैटर्न का पार्ट है वो. ओके, तो जब तक हम वो करेंगे नहीं तब तक हमको लगेगा ही नहीं कि हमने वर्शिप किया है. ओके, सो दिस इज the pattern and multiple patterns joined together to give the grand design of the culture called as the configuration. Now she says that actually she borrowed this idea of configuration from Kroeber and Wissler. So Kroeber and Wissler, they also said that जब उन्होंने कल्चर एरिया का आइडिया देना था तो they thought कि कल्चर एरिया कैसे डिफाइन करें. So the question that was in front of them ki how to define the culture area, it can be on the basis of language, it can be on the basis of anything. Okay, now they decided finally ki subsistence should be the basis of deciding the culture area. तो उन्होंने एक जैसे कि पूरे नॉर्थ और साउथ अमेरिका को 8 कल्चर एरियाज में क्रोबर ने डिवाइड किया एंड बेस्ड ऑन सबसिस्टेंस, बिकॉज food or subsistence means how to obtain food. So here in this case when he was using subsistence, तो उन्होंने बोला कि जैसे कि एक आइडिया दिया कि हॉर्स कॉम्प्लेक्स है किसी सोसाइटी में, तो हॉर्स कॉम्प्लेक्स है तो इन दैट केस they are using horse is the central part of their all the activities, whether in hunting, whether in raiding, whether in other parts of the economy, everything, horse is the central pattern. That's why उन्होंने horse complex या subsistence के लिए horse complex का concept दे दिया. But now Ruth Benedict was like कि rather than looking at material aspects of the culture, we should think about the value system as well, or the emotional aspects of the culture as well. अब उनके दिमाग में एक सवाल था that what is integrating all of them? आखिर में why multiple traits and complexes are joined together to make pattern, or why multiple patterns are coming together to make a configuration? What's the reason or the basis of integration? So she says that the basis of integration is a common trend that is shared by all, or common value shared by all, and that common value is what she calls as special genius. Okay, so this special genius will be the basis of integration of the cultural elements, and these special genius is of two types as per Ruth Benedict. That is, ये भी इनका ये idea इनका खुद का नहीं था. She was actually masters in English, so she got it from Friedrich Nietzsche. ठीक है, तो उन्होंने ये idea दिया Apollonian or Dionysian genius. So Apollonian, that is a Greek god sun. So he is calm, composed, kind. Okay, all the good values that you can think of. Okay, while Dionysian is a Greek god associated with luxury, wine, and all that stuff. So he's aggressive, he's selfish, individualistic, and or some kind of rash, chaotic in nature. तो जितने भी नेगेटिव वैल्यूज हैं वो डायनीसियन से एसोसिएट. तो उन्होंने बोला कि अगर किसी एक कल्चर एलिमेंट में आपको अपोलोनियन मींस इफ इन द कल्चर ऑल यू विल सी दैट द कल्चरल एलिमेंट्स कैन यूनाइट ओनली एंड ओनली इफ दे बेसिकली हैव शेयर्ड वैल्यू सिस्टम, तभी वो यूनाइट कर पाएंगे, एल्स दे वोंट यूनाइट. सो इट्स लाइक अगर आप फिजिक्स के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से समझो, तो सपोज दिस इज any spare part. So in order for this spare part to unite, they should complement each other like this, so that they should fit in with each other. In the same way, this shared value system is providing coherence between the cultural elements, and that is why it will be able to unite together, and hence the pattern will be created. Okay, अगर वो coherence नहीं आ रहा है, so in that case the cultural elements will never be able to join together. So this shared value is bringing them coherence, and that is she calls as special geniuses of two type, Apollonian and Dionysian. तो मतलब आप देखोगे कि कल्चर के हर ट्रेट में या तो आपको अपोलोनियन जीनियस दिख रहा है तभी वो एक साथ आ गए, या फिर डायनीसियन जीनियस है तो इस वजह से वो एक साथ आ गए. सो हियर शी इज सेइंग दैट this trait will be inherent in the individuals of a particular group, and they will then decide what cultural traits. तब जैसे कि कोई गांधीवादी है, तो गांधीज्म का सबसे बेसिक आइडिया क्या है? सत्य और अहिंसा. So any Gandhian, whatever practice, whatever things that he will do, or whatever steps that he will take, और कोई इनोवेशन भी करेगा तो उसमें मेक श्योर करेगा कि सत्य और अहिंसा इज देयर. नहीं तो एनी गांधीयन कैन नॉट टेक अप द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ लाइक वायलेंस. क्यों? क्योंकि वो या फिर कोई ऐसी एक्टिविटी नहीं करेगा जिसमें वायलेंस हो. व्हाई? बिकॉज वो जो इनहेरेंट फैक्टर है जिसकी वजह से वो पैटर्न बन रहा है, इट इज गेटिंग वायलेटेड. सो एनी प्रैक्टिस मींस इफ यू गिव चॉइसेस टू गांधी या गांधीवादी लोगों को, तो दे विल चूज ओनली दोज एक्टिविटीज जिसमें प्रिंसिपल ऑफ सत्य एंड अहिंसा इज देयर. सो दे विल नेवर चीट और एनी काइंड ऑफ एक्टिविटी जिसमें किसी भी तरीके से सत्य और अहिंसा का वायलेशन हो रहा है. आर यू गेटिंग दिस? सो दैट इज द इनहेरेंट वैल्यू ऑफ गांधीइज्म. और कास्टिज्म का इनहेरेंट वैल्यू क्या है? प्योरिटी एंड पोल्यूशन. तो कास्टिस्ट जितने भी आइडियोलॉजीज होंगे, यू विल फाइंड दैट समवेयर डाउन द लाइन द आइडिया ऑफ प्योरिटी एंड पोल्यूशन इज प्रेजेंट और विजिबल. इसी वजह से कास्ट के सारे जो आइडियाज हैं वो एक साथ एज पर रूट बेंडिक कनेक्ट हो पाते हैं. Okay, that is this integrative factor. This is the underlying value that integrates the elements of the culture, and that she calls as the special genius. Okay, and this is of two types: Apollonian and Dionysian. Now she did a comparative study of three cultural groups in the same book, Patterns of Culture, that is Zuni, Dobu, and Wakyu. Okay, so Zuni actually इन्होंने खुद नहीं स्टडी किया था, but this was collected from the ethnography done by Ruth Wenzel. Dobu was from work done by Rio Fortune, who was the husband, one time husband of Margaret Mead, and Wakyu, the study by Francois Hinze. Okay, so Zuni क्या है? So in among Zunis, what you'll find that these people, they are less inventive and more traditional. Okay, and they are less individualistic, or individualism is completely absent, and they work for group. In a way, she highlights the presence of अपोलोनियन जीनियस. ठीक है, अब यहाँ पे अपोलोनियन जीनियस है, तो हर कल्चरल एलिमेंट में आपको अपोलोनियन जीनियस देखने को मिलेगा, तभी तो कोहेरेंस बनेगा, तभी तो पैटर्न क्रिएट होगा. एंड दैट्स व्हाई मैजिक, it is for group welfare. Magic is for group welfare. Okay, Zunis, they are cooperative in nature, do not engage into any kind of conflict. In fact, she says that Zunis में ऐसा है कि to engage into a fight, even if the right is on your side, is considered to be a matter of stigma. मतलब अगर आप किसी लड़ाई में पार्टिसिपेट भी कर रहे हो, भले आप सही हो, फिर भी वो स्टिग्मा है. मतलब लड़ाई में पार्ट ही नहीं लेना है. No matter whether you're right or wrong, doesn't matter. So to engage in your fight, even if the right is on your side, is a matter of stigma. So they are more cooperative. Marriage is very much casual, no prominence to leadership. No Zuni will do anything in order to highlight himself in front of others. किसी भी तरीके से, या हायरार्की में राइज करने के लिए, या इज्जत स्पेशल मिलनी चाहिए, कोई लाइमलाइट मिलनी चाहिए, कुछ नहीं. आई एम बिकॉज वी आर, इस टाइप का आइडिया है. ओके, दैट मीन्स माई इंडिविजुअल आइडेंटिटी इज नथिंग विदाउट माई ग्रुप. दैट इज द ग्रुप कलेक्टिवनेस. दैट इज अपोलोनियन जीनियस seen in every aspect of the culture. Leadership is a key, not a key principle position here in this Zunis. तो कोई भी ऐसा काम नहीं करेंगे जिससे वो इंडिविजुअल की तरह अपने आप को प्रमोट कर सके. नथिंग लाइक दैट. कंप्लीटली ऑल द एलिमेंट्स ऑफ द कल्चर विल बी ऑफ दैट केस. तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने बोला कि ड्यू टू अपोलोनियन जीनियस, द चाइल्ड रियरिंग प्रैक्टिसेस आल्सो ऑफ द Zuni will be to suppress the individuality of the children. तो उनके माइंड को इस तरीके से ट्रेन किया जाएगा दैट इंडिविजुअलिटी, यू आर बिकॉज ऑफ द ग्रुप. इफ यू रिमेंबर, वी टॉक्ड अबाउट 3 टाइप्स ऑफ एनकल्चरेशन. डिपेंडेंस ट्रेनिंग, so they are basically trained for dependence training. Okay, that means your identity is nothing without the group. तो हर कल्चरल एलिमेंट में आपको अपोलोनियन जीनियस देखने को मिलेगा. Now let's talk about Dobus. So Rio Fortune wrote a book, Sorcerers of Dobu. Okay, वहां से इन्होंने ये एलिमेंट उठाया, ये स्टडी उठाई. So Dobus are in a state of conflict, competition. They are secretive, skeptic, and paranoid of each other. That is Dionysian genius. ठीक है, वो एक दूसरे से सब चीज छुपा के रखते हैं, नेबर से डरते हैं. In fact, Rio Fortune in his book says that the Dobus, they are so much paranoid, they are so much skeptic that a woman, when she cooks the food, she will never leave her pot unattended. मतलब खाना बनाते समय जो अपनी पॉटरी है जिसमें खाना बन रहा है, she will never leave it alone, she will never leave it unattended because she has a fear that somebody will poison it. उसको कोई उसमें जहर मिला देगा. And that is the kind of skepticism that they know, that they have against their neighbors, against their, and वहाँ पे enmity is considered to be a non-friendship, is a kind of deviance. Okay, so Dionysian genius. So what they will do? Magic for harming others or protecting oneself from theft, poisoning, or attack from neighbor. Okay. So Dobus, they do not believe in love, harmony, friendship. So what Ruth Benedict talks about Dobu, an average Dobu, उसने बोला कि if somebody डोबू के लिए आइडियल कौन होगा और एक डोबू चाइल्ड के लिए आइडियल पर्सन कौन होगा? दैट हु हैज बेसिकली किल्ड मेनी, हु हैज स्टोलन a lot of property from other. Okay, the one who is involved in multiple conflicts is the ideal person, because if he is surviving to this time, that means all these tactics has worked for him. तो जो सबसे ज्यादा चोरी कर रहा है, सबसे ज्यादा मर्डर किए हैं जिसने, और जो सबसे ज्यादा कंफ्लिक्ट में इन्वॉल्व है, that person will be the ideal person for an Dobu child, because if he is doing so and if he is surviving, that means these kind of things have worked for him. Dionysian genius. And the child rearing practices will inculcate in the mind of the Dobu child not to trust anyone. Okay, to hurt. तो वहां पे ऐसा है, जीरो सम गेम की आइडिया है. जीरो सम गेम मीन्स तुम्हारे पास पैसा तभी आएगा जब तुम किसी से छीन के लाओगे. मीन्स somebody's loss is your profit. Okay, it's not like that collective gain and collective loss. No, your profit is equal to somebody's loss. You have to snatch it in order to build yourself. Okay, so this is how the Dionysian genius is seen in all the aspects of Dobu culture. The third is the case of Waki. We already know. So she says that they are megalomaniacs. मतलब अपनी ग्रैंड्योर बनाना चाहते हैं कि देखो हम इतने बड़े लोग हैं और compete कर रहे हैं एक दूसरे से. Okay, and competition to the extent that they will destroy their goods just to proclaim their status. अगर कोई लेने वाला नहीं है तो कंबल जला देंगे, तो अपने गुड्स को डिस्ट्रॉय कर देंगे just to proclaim their status. That is, they are megalomaniacs. ये कौन सा जीनियस होगा यहाँ पे? Dionysian. ठीक है, which is clearly reflected in the Potlatch ceremony. The chief competing with each other, and जब एक chief बांटता है कुछ, so he will stand on the stage and give like speeches, self-boasting speeches, and also making sarcastic remarks on the other chief. कि तुम्हारे नेता क्या कर रहे हैं, देखो हमने किया है. Okay, so such something like this. So that is the Dionysian genius seen in all the aspects of the culture. Now you have to understand this simple idea है. Pattern of culture का मतलब है traits and complexes, they are integrated with one another, or they are arranged in a functional rule. Okay, that is what is called as pattern. So simply speaking, way of arrangement of traits and complex. This is pattern, way of arrangement. And the final product or the grand design that is created is the configuration. and this grand design is because of some integrative factor, and this is called as the special genius, which is of two types, Apollonian and Dionysian. This is the crux of Ruth Benedict. Clear hai? Okay. Now, criticism of Ruth Benedict. So, first major criticism is by Maurice Opler. उन्होंने बोला कि only two factors of integration, या तो Dionysian है या तो Apollonian है. There can be multiple factors of integration of cultural factors. मतलब आप तो ऐसे बोले कि आपने पूरी दुनिया को बाइनरीज में डिवाइड कर दिया. Either they have Dionysian genius or Apollonian genius. Third factor को कुछ बताया नहीं आपने. Okay. So Maurice Opler criticizes the limited genius idea given by Ruth Benedict. Okay, there can be multiple. तो उन्होंने एक आइडिया दिया जिसको कहते हैं themes. Okay, an idea against the idea of special genius given by Ruth Benedict. तो बोला there can be multiple themes that might cause integration between the cultural elements, and that themes can be economical, that themes can be political, that can be anything. Okay, not necessarily Apollonian or Dionysian. Okay, second, she was criticized for ignoring conflicts in Zuni और नॉन कोहेरेंट एलिमेंट्स इन जूनी. तो जूनी को इस तरीके से दिखाया है कि ओवर पीसफुल लोग हैं, उनमें कंफ्लिक्ट है ही नहीं. पर व्हेन दिस स्टडी वाज एक्चुअली सीन, डीएम लुई का ही आइडिया है, ये क्रिटिसिज्म है. तो दैट डीएम लुई एक्चुअली स्टडीड दिस कंसेप्ट, सॉरी दिस जूनी स्टडी दैट वाज डन बाय रूथ बेंजेल. तो वहां पे उन्होंने बोला कि उन्होंने तो कंफ्लिक्ट भी बताया, उन्होंने बताया कि सोसाइटी में लड़ाइयां भी हो रही हैं और वहां पे पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम है उसको मैनेज करने के लिए. बट शी इंटेंशनली इग्नोर्ड द डिस्कॉर्डेंट एलिमेंट्स इन द जूनी सोसाइटी बिकॉज ये उनकी थ्योरी के साथ फिट नहीं बैठ रहा था. क्योंकि उन्होंने तो थ्योरी देनी थी कि अपोलोनियन जीनियस सब में है, एंड दैट्स व्हाई एनी डिस्कॉर्डेंट एलिमेंट, एनी काइंड ऑफ कंफ्लिक्ट विल एक्चुअली challenge the theory, and that's why she ignored this, only selectively picking up the data that will justify her theory. The third one is एक सबसे बड़ा problem, causality of special genius. Causality means how special genius was created in the very first place. Why are we Apollonian? Why are somebody Dionysian? ऐसा क्यों है? Okay, so this is, she is silent about it. Why some people are Apollonian, why others are Dionysian in the world. Okay, so she has not mentioned anything about the causality of special genius. Now the second scholar, Margaret Mead. So Margaret Mead actually she believed that in the idea of culture determinism, that is, culture will be shaping up the personality. Okay, so inhone, just to tell you, she had a daughter named Catherine Bateson. Okay, so with a doctor, Benjamin Spock, who was the pediatrics, actually she conducted an experiment on her own daughter. And based on that experiment or based on that study, the current feeding practices of the world have been determined. And basically उससे पहले क्या था कि the children were fed at regular intervals. कि 1 घंटे बाद या 2 घंटे बाद, every 2 hours the children will be fed, breastfed. What she did, she actually nurtured her daughter on demand feeding, demand based feeding. Okay, that is, whenever she would cry, she would feed, or maybe looking at the cues of her daughter, she will actually breastfeed her daughter. ठीक है, उसके बेसिस पे she actually understood कि ये किस किस मोमेंट पे डिमांड करेगी एंड व्हाट इज द फंक्शनल पैटर्न ऑफ हर ब्रेन, और उसी के हिसाब से उसकी ट्रेनिंग डिसाइड की इस पर्टिकुलर टाइम पे उसका ब्रेन सबसे ज्यादा फंक्शनल है, सबसे ज्यादा रिसेप्टिव है. At this point her brain will be least receptive, and at that point of time we should not train her. Okay, so the current breastfeeding practices of the world right now is a gift of the experiment that Margaret Mead conducted on her daughter with her pediatrician, that is Benjamin Spock. Okay, now coming to her work, the first one, that is coming of age in Samoa. Actually उस समय जो ट्रेंड चल रहा था, the prevailing opinion at that point of time, which was given by a psychologist named as G. Stanley Hall. He said that the physiological changes, that is bodily changes during the puberty phase, are universal in nature. That means हर जगह जब भी puberty आएगी तो some sex hormones will be secreted in the body, and since these changes are universal, the behavioral changes that an individual experience will also be universal, and that's why he says that rebellion attitude in the puberty time will be universal. क्योंकि physiological changes भी same हो रहे हैं, hormonal changes आ रहे हैं body में, and these hormonal changes are responsible for the behavioral changes that is anyone experiencing during the puberty phase. And since one group of people, say in America, are experiencing rebellious attitude, तो उन्होंने बोला कि rebellious attitude will be universal all across the world. अब ये डिबेट ये बेसिकली एक नेचर साइड को कंट्रीब्यूट किया कि जो हमारा बिहेवियर है दैट इज बीइंग डिटरमिन्ड बाय आवर फिजियोलॉजिकल फीचर्स, हमारी बॉडी डिसाइड कर रही है, हमारी बायोलॉजी डिसाइड कर रही है. एंड नाउ दिस वाज नॉट एक्सेप्टेड बाय फ्रांस बोआ. फ्रांस बोआ वांटेड टू चैलेंज इट, एंड दैट्स व्हाई ही आस्क्ड मीड कि go and find out an alternative. So he sent Mead to Samoa, like just go and try to find out an alternative to it. So Mead went to Samoa, and here she interviewed 68 girls between the age 8 to 20. Okay, that is pre-puberty, puberty and post-puberty. And what she experienced, or what she found, that none of the girls in this society actually experience any behavioral changes during the puberty phase. कोई भी थे प्री प्यूबर्टी में कुछ डेटा रिकॉर्ड किया कि कैसा बिहेवियर है, और प्यूबर्टी एंड पोस्ट प्यूबर्टी में भी चेंज देखने की कोशिश की, बट कोई भी ऐसा सिग्निफिकेंट चेंज नहीं दिखा ड्यूरिंग द प्यूबर्टी फेज. नाउ व्हाई इज इट सो? तो शी सेज दैट द चेंज इज not because की biological changes नहीं हो रहे, biological changes तो universal है, but they are not experiencing any behavioral changes because of their culture. So in their culture, premarital sex is allowed. They commonly talk about sex, birth, pregnancy, periods, death with their children, which we as a societal members, मतलब वो we मतलब American culture, they are hesitant about it. मतलब parents do not talk about periods or such kind of menstrual changes or some kind of hormonal changes in the body that a boy or girl will experience during puberty. Even in our society also, our parents do not talk about like this act of reproduction, sex and all that with us. They are still hesitant about it. And in such a scenario, this puberty is something, an unexpected event in the life of an American. While in case of Samoans, since they already are exposed to it, that is sex, death, period, pregnancies and all that, so for them puberty is just another day in the life, because they already knew about it कि ऐसा होता है और उनको पहले से पता था. It was not something unusual event. Moreover, the society or the culture here is less emotional, specifically with respect to the intimate relation. So abortion is okay, premarital sex is okay, and children without marriage is also okay. So not much restrictions with respect to the sexual act also, and that is why they do not experience any kind of rebellious attitude. लेकिन अमेरिका में क्या है, restrictions हैं sexual activity को लेके, okay, और premarital sex और premarital pregnancies को लेके, due to which अब now just consider this, the body is secreting sexual hormones, okay, desire for sex is coming up, but there is a restriction there, not to have sexual act or not to engage into sexual act. That's why rebellion attitude, okay. बट यहाँ पे ऐसा कोई प्रीमैरिटल सेक्स को लेके कोई रेस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं है, ओके. चिल्ड्रन विदाउट मैरिज नॉट एन इश्यू, लेजिटिमेसी इलेजिटिमेसी का कोई इश्यू नहीं है, नो इमोशनल अटैचमेंट विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द इंटीमेट रिलेशन की चास्टिटी होनी चाहिए, ओनली वन पार्टनर शुड बी देयर, नथिंग लाइक दैट, एंड दैट्स व्हाई नो रिबेलियस एटीट्यूड, क्योंकि कोई रेस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं है. सो अगेन शी हाईलाइटेड विद दिस फैक्ट दैट this is the rebellious attitude is because of culture, and since the culture is completely different in Samoa, koi rebellious attitude nahi hai. Okay, this is what she highlighted in coming of age in Samoa. Now talking about the idea of culture determinism, their culture, their child rearing practices are responsible for their personality formation. Okay, next is sex and temperament in 3 primitive societies. So here she studied 3 societies: Arapesh, Mundugumor and Shambuli. So in Arapesh, what she found that they have surplus, ठीक है, they are surrounded by certain values, पूरे protected लोग हैं, and they have surplus. Now in this society you will find that the society is, the culture is egalitarian in nature, and that's why men and women have or make joint efforts in various tasks, even in child caring also, child rearing also. Men and women, they equally participate in child rearing. अब आप देखोगे कि egalitarian culture ऐसा है that men and women are equal. So child rearing में a man takes pride in child rearing activity. I might have told you this dialogue that when somebody actually makes a comment on a working man that look how he is beautiful, how smart he is, so people respond that smart, you should have seen him before he has bore all the children. Just like in the patriarchal societies, कि जैसे कि किसी लड़की को या मदर को कमेंट करते हैं that how beautiful she is, so the other person might say that you should have seen her before marriage or before she had given birth to 2 children. The same comment is for the men in the Arapesh society, and men and women, they find extreme happiness, extreme satisfaction in taking care of the children. Okay, that is this Arapesh. So अब वो ये बताना चाह रही है कि जो roles हैं of child rearing and all, they are not biologically determined but culturally determined. Okay, so child care role is not biologically hardwired in the woman's body, but it depends from cultural training. So since यहाँ पे culture egalitarian है, men and women, they equally participate in child care activity. The second one is Mundukumor. So Mundukumor में there is practice of polygyny because status is directly proportional to number of wives. More the number of wives, more will be the status of a person. In this scenario, what actually happens that a man will actually celebrate the birth of a daughter. Man will celebrate the birth of a daughter because that daughter can now be used to exchange for another wife. But woman will be not happy कि भाई बेटी पैदा हुई अब एक और वाइफ आ जाएगी. Okay, so this is the basic problem. Now, so here she highlighted that every sex, or there is a conflicting relationship between persons of each sex with themselves. Means female are basically having some kind of envious relationship with other female. मतलब उसकी बेटी होगी तो उसको लगेगा कि अब वो बेटी मेरे लिए एक और वाइफ लेके आएगी या को वाइफ लेके आएगी जिसकी वजह से जेलसी है, जिसकी वजह से टेंशन होगी मेरे घर में. ठीक है. And father and son, they have a tension relationship because if father uses all the daughter for getting wife for himself, what will be left for the son? Because marriage is by exchange, somebody will provide a woman, they will get a woman in exchange. In this scenario, if father uses all the daughters, what will be left of them? Okay, now this culture of polygyny and marriage by exchange actually creates a conflicting relation in Mundu Gumor. Okay, and Margaret Mead highlighted that Mundugumor women are equally aggressive as Mundugumor men. Equally aggressive. So nothing like that of submissiveness or pati ki seva karni hai ya is type attitude, but equally aggressive. She actually highlights the idea that if a man is supposed to fight a woman, make sure that she is not armed and you yourself are armed. अगर तुम बिना हथियार के उसके पास जाओगे या फिर अगर उसके पास हथियार होगा तो your physical strength will be less, or it will be not of that utility in order to beat the woman. She is as much aggressive as any man can be, and if you are going to fight her without a weapon, there is an equal probability that you will get beaten up. Okay, so again highlighting the fact that कल्चर ऐसा है, पर्सनालिटी कैसी बनी और इनका कल्चर कैसा है और पर्सनालिटी मैन और वुमेन दोनों सबमिसिव हैं, दोनों एक दूसरे की रिस्पेक्ट कर रहे हैं. ओके, नाउ टॉकिंग अबाउट शाम्बुली. सो हियर जस्ट ऑपोजिट ऑफ जेंडर डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर. सो वुमेन आर ऑल इन इकोनॉमी. वुमेन कंट्रोल इकोनॉमी. ओके, they go to field, they basically decide what to cultivate, they are engaged in the trading of the materials, okay, so whatever is the produce. Men, they basically work or remain at house. They do all the household activities, सफाई, कपड़ा और खाना वाना सब कुछ वो करते हैं. And at the same time, they basically want to specialize in arts of making jewelries, making face masks, making dresses and ornaments for themselves. So they want to specialize, and not just art, they want a validation of it. That means if they make something today, they will expect their wives to come and appreciate that art. Okay, the wife aake appreciate karenge. So just like the woman, suppose if married woman basically is making some kind of new dish कि आज मैंने YouTube से देख के ये chicken biryani बनाई है, so they will expect the validation from the husband, that when the husband will come and have the dinner, so what he'll do कि बढ़िया बनी है और appreciate करेगा, or maybe the in-laws will be appreciating it. In the same way, men when they do something, they basically expect the validation of the woman for it. And a man, just like a woman, जैसे कि हमारी society में woman needs to be multi-talented in a patriarchal society. सिलाई, कढ़ाई, बुनाई और बहुत सारी और चीजें आनी चाहिए उनको. She should be good at cooking, she should be good at designs or drawing and all that stuff. In the same way, man also cannot restrict himself only to one single art. They try to expand their zones to multiple arts, and not just to expand but to excel in it. And they seek validation from the respective women. Again highlighting the fact that gender division of labor is not biologically hardwired, but it depends upon the cultural training. So यहाँ पे culture ऐसा है, that's why the personality is different. Women control the economy, men take care of the household. Okay, but here also the hierarchy is not there. Women are not the dominant one. Women treat men with respect and dignity. Okay, so she has highlighted this fact that women society is egalitarian and women treat men with respect and dignity. So if you remember, जब हम लोगों ने test 1 में division of labor by gender की बात की थी, so we have talked about 3 types of division of labor. So this one is dual sex configuration. Okay, in which although the work is separated, yet there is no hierarchy of work. So this is the study of sex and temperament in 3 primitive societies. So this is the major work that has been done by Margaret Mead. Now the criticism. Margaret Mead के बारे में कभी भी बात आए, don't forget to mention this man. ये उसकी आत्मा को भी शांति देगा. And it's very much necessary because he has spent his entire anthropological career in criticizing Margaret Mead. Okay, so that's why Derek Freeman, the first criticism should be mentioned, and Derek Freeman actually revisited Samoan Islands that was studied by Margaret Mead. Not exactly the same villages, but some nearby villages, and in which he found that Margaret Mead was actually hoaxed by informants, according to him. मतलब hoax मतलब गलत information दे दी गई pressure में आके. Moreover, he says that hoaxing was mainly because Margaret Mead was not aware about their language. तो एक ट्रांसलेटर का यूज कर रही थी, तो उसने कुछ और बोला, ट्रांसलेटर को पता चला कि ये मतलब गाली दे रहा है, तो उसने कुछ और बता दिया. ओके, समथिंग लाइक दिस. जैसे कि हम लोग कॉन्वेंट स्कूल में पढ़ते थे, तो वहाँ पे भी ऐसा ही होता था कि जब केरला से टीचर आते थे और जब वो हमें मारते थे तो हम लोग से गाली ही निकलती थी. अब वो किसी से पूछे कि इसने क्या बोला, वो तो अपना दोस्त है, तो वो तो ऐसे बता के सर वो बोल रहा है कि सॉरी बोल रहा है. ओके, बट अल्टीमेटली तो जो भावनाएं होती थी वो अलग होती थी. दिस इज व्हाट डेरेक फ्रीमैन एक्चुअली हाईलाइटेड कि शी हैज बीन होक्स्ड बाय द इन्फॉर्मेंट. डेरेक फ्रीमैन एक्चुअली सेड दैट he has actually accessed certain letters which Margaret Mead wrote secretly to Franz Boas. और उसने मार्गरेट मीड उसने अपने बुक में पब्लिश भी किया. ठीक है, कि मार्गरेट मीड भाई ने लिखा है कि बोआ को कि ये लोग मुझे लगता है झूठ बोल रहे हैं, ये कुछ भी बोल रहे हैं, आई जस्ट कैन नॉट अंडरस्टैंड एंड द ट्रांसलेटर आल्सो इज नॉट वर्किंग विथ मी. सो दैट लेटर्स हैव बीन पब्लिश्ड, बट Derek Freeman made sure कि all these works or all this criticism what he published or what he talked about was published after the death of Margaret Mead. तो Margaret Mead जिंदा ही नहीं बची उसको एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए कि नहीं भाई तुम गलत बोल रहे हो. So that's why first hoax by the informants, language नहीं पता थी, and third it talks about certain villages in which there is a strict virginity complex. Although the villages were on the Samoan Islands, but not exactly the same villages that were studied by Margaret Mead. But he says that कि ऐसा थोड़ी ना होगा कि यूपी के बगल में लास वेगस रह रहा होगा. ओके, अगल बगल है तो इतना ड्रास्टिक कल्चरल चेंज थोड़ी ना होगा. ओके, यस. सो he found that these people have strict virginity complex, and what Margaret Mead said कि premarital sex allowed है, children without marriage allowed है, abortion is very common. Okay, and no rapes and nothing forced sex वाली कोई भी feeling नहीं है वहाँ पे. But he says that strict virginity complexes and issues related to raped and forced sex are very common in such society. तो मार्गरेट मीड ने जबरदस्ती, तो यहाँ से उन्होंने कंक्लूड किया that Margaret Mead went with some preconceived notions. मतलब वो गई जानबूझ के ये प्रूव करने के लिए कि कल्चरल डिटर्मिनिज्म. She was against biological determinism. She went with this aim only to collect only that data that will reject biological determinism or the statement that was given by G. Stanley Hall. इस वजह से उसका research already biased थी. Okay, so these are some of the major criticism. Next, we'll talk about the third approach, that is culture and personality are interlinked. So here we'll talk about the first column. Ralph Linton. Okay, so what Ralph Linton says, he says that he wrote a book. The name of the book is The Study of Man. Okay, in which he says that individuals, they interact in specific social context. Okay, every individual. For example, we as a teacher and student, basically we are interacting in specific social context. Okay, and this there is a network of learned social behavior in this context. That means this learned social behavior he is calling at culture. So we have learned how you should behave with a teacher. I have learned how a teacher is supposed to behave. And this network of learned social behavior basically creates and maintain community. If we are following a pattern of learned behavior, I'm behaving like what is expected of a teacher, you are behaving what is expected of a student, then only this community or structure is maintained. Very similar to Redcliffe Brown. Okay, here actually Redcliffe Brown, थोड़ी सी स्टोरी सुन लो कि Redcliffe Brown और बोआ को ये इंटीग्रेट करना चाहते हैं. Actually he had मतलब इनकी थ्योरीज में you will find an integration of Franz Boas and Redcliffe Brown. So what he wanted to say, actually क्यों ऐसा था, he basically was जो इनके फादर थे काफी ज्यादा अथॉरिटेरियन आदमी थे, बहुत इनको मार वार पड़ी बचपन में, और काफी ज्यादा मार पड़ने की वजह से ना he actually hated authoritarian figures. And what happened in his initial years of graduation in archaeology, उसके बाद ये वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 में चले गए एज ए अमेरिकन आर्मी की तरफ से चले गए. एंड देन व्हेन ही केम बैक फ्रॉम आर्मी, व्हाट ही डिड, ही इन द यूनिफॉर्म इटसेल्फ वेंट टू मीट फ्रांस बोआ. बोला कि अब मेरे को अपनी एजुकेशन कंटिन्यू करनी है, आप मेरे को अपने अंडर मास्टर्स करा लो या पीएचडी करा दो. तो फ्रांस बोआ वाज अगेंस्ट अमेरिकन आर्मी पार्टिसिपेटिंग इन वर्ल्ड वॉर 1. तो जब फ्रांस बोआ के पास ये गए और दैट टू इन आर्मी, तो वाज वेरी मच फ्यूरियस, बहुत गुस्सा आ गए वो. तो ही सेड कि बेटा तुमसे नहीं हो पाएगा, एंड उसको भगा दिया. बोल तुमसे तो सच में नहीं होगा और तुमको तो नहीं रखूंगा अपने साथ, क्योंकि मैं अगेंस्ट हूँ आर्मी पार्टिसिपेटिंग इन वर्ल्ड वॉर 1. ही देन वेंट टू यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ ऑक्सफोर्ड, वहां पे उन्होंने मास्टर्स किया, वहां पे पीएचडी की. एंड व्हाट हैपेंड 20 years down the line, 2 decades later, he replaced Franz Boas in the same university at the head of the anthropology. ठीक है, he was the one who replaced Franz Boas, University of Chicago. Okay, and at that point of time he was very much against Franz Boas. तो इस वजह से उनके ना स्टूडेंट के साथ इंटरेक्शन बहुत ज्यादा फ्री एंड फेयर रहते थे, बहुत ज्यादा भुकाल में रहते थे कि मैं इस यूनिवर्सिटी का हेड हूँ तो या इस डिपार्टमेंट का हेड हूँ, नहीं. एंड एक्चुअली ही हेटेड अथॉरिटेरियन फिगर्स. और ब्राउन और बोआ में यही डिफरेंस था कि दे ऑलवेज वांटेड टू मेंटेन हायरार्की. ओके, अब ये इस तरीके से थे कि हायरार्की को बिल्कुल खत्म करना चाहते थे स्टूडेंट्स के बीच में. दे बेसिकली ही वेंट लाइक फ्रेंड्स. एंड बट उस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे बोआ एंड ब्राउन, दे वर वन ऑफ द मोस्ट प्रोमिनेंट फिगर्स ऑफ एंथ्रोपोलॉजी. एंड दैट्स व्हाई when he read them he was very much convinced, but personal level पे बहुत ज्यादा अगेंस्ट भी थे. इस वजह से इन्होंने क्या डिसाइड किया कि दोनों को इंटीग्रेट कर देते. ठीक है, कि जो बोआ ने बोला, जो ब्राउन ने बोला, तो वही आइडिया उन्होंने, आपको लगेगा कई जगह पे कि दैट एज इफ आई एम रीडिंग स्ट्रक्चरल फंक्शनिज्म ऑफ ब्राउन लाइक दिस, एंड एट वेरियस प्लेसेस यू विल फाइंड दैट एज इफ आई एम रीडिंग the historical particularism and the idea of cultural relativism given by Boas. तो आपको इनकी बेसिक पर्सनालिटी के आइडिया में दिखेगा. So he basically integrated the idea of Boas and Brown. Just remember this. And here again repeating the fact that individuals interact in the social context, and this interaction is based on, or this creates a network of learned social behaviors which he calls as culture, which actually maintains or creates the community. Now he says that this network of learned social behavior has two aspects. One is overt and the other is covert aspects of culture. That is, overt का मतलब visible to all. आप लोगों ने covert operations वगैरह सुने होंगे, तो जो आर्मी वाले करते हैं, सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक्स एंड ऑल. तो overt operations, overt means that aspect of the culture that is visible to everyone, like economy है, religious beliefs हैं. But covert aspect is not visible to all, or at least the outsiders. It refers to emotions, beliefs. Okay. So he basically tried to understand, or he focused his attention to covert aspects of the culture. और उसने बोला कि जो ethnographic studies हैं अभी तक वो overt aspects पे ही ज़्यादा focus कर रही हैं. But the focus should be on the covert aspect. So he focused, or he gazed upon the covert aspects. यहीं से idea आएगा personality का. Okay. So focused upon the covert aspects of culture. Now he says that this learned social behaviors, or this community, being a part of the community, assigns us status. That means a position in the structure. Being a part, अब ये आपको काफी कुछ Redcliffe Brown जैसा दिख रहा है कि that being a part of the structure, we are given certain kind of status. This status can be of two types: ascribed, जो by birth मिलता है, and achieved, जो basically हम acquire करते हैं, okay, with our efforts and all. Then every respective status has a role. How a particular individual is supposed to behave, or how a person with a particular status is supposed to behave. Expectations of behavior. ठीक है. Now this, sorry, पहले role का देखो. So he says that the role can be of two types. First one is actual role or actual culture, he says. That means how we actually behave. And second is ideal role or ideal culture. How we are ought to behave. That is, as a son, you are ought to behave like Ram. Right? कि आपके फादर ने आपके बिहाफ पे कोई कमिटमेंट कर दी, तो आप उसको फॉलो करोगे क्योंकि आपके फादर की कमिटमेंट थी. हम लोग को यही सिखाया जाता है. ओके, राम या श्रवण कुमार. Okay, that is how we are supposed to behave like a son. This is the ideal role, ideal culture. But how we actually behave, although we try to behave, or we tend to behave, मतलब at least वो ideal है, हम कोशिश करते हैं कि काफी हद तक वहां पहुंच जाएं. Okay, तो ठीक है, we will respect our father, we'll honor his commitments or whatever it is. But जब शादी की बात आएगी तो ठीक है यार, मेरे को जिंदगी बितानी है, आपके कहने पे कैसे कर लूं. Okay, that is the actual role or actual culture. Okay, so two types of roles, or what he calls, he uses the term culture for it: actual and ideal. Now he says, यहां से idea आता है गोवा का, status and role can be universalized or specialized. Status and role can be or may be universalized or specialized based on whether they are shared by all members or only a few members. Based on whether they are shared by all the members or only few members. Based on this idea, वो मतलब ये बोलना चाह रहे हैं कि status and role means the position that you have and the behavior, expected behavior out of that position, it can be universal or it can be some specialized. For example, हम लोग कोई भी role status occupy कर रहे हैं. For example, me being a teacher, you being a student, or being a son, father, daughter, बहुत सारे. But at least we are the individual of the same cultural group, same society. तो एक status तो हम सब share करते हैं, being a member of that same society, right? तो अब वो status जो हम share कर रहे हैं, that is our universal status, because being a part of that cultural group is the status that we all share. बाकी अलग अलग role status हैं. Somebody will be a prime minister, you will become an IAS officer. That will be a specialized status that you will be having. Not everybody will become an IAS officer, not everybody will become a prime minister. But we will still be part of that larger cultural entity or that cultural group. ये समझ में आ रहा है आपको? So based on this, whether the status is specialized or universalized, our training or our status personality is created. मान लो आपकी IAS का स्टेटस है तो आप आईएएस जैसी पर्सनालिटी डेवलप करोगे. आपका पीएम का स्टेटस है या प्रेसिडेंट का स्टेटस है, आप उसकी जैसी पर्सनालिटी डेवलप करोगे. बट एक स्टेटस इज शेयर्ड बाय ऑल, दैट इज द मेंबर ऑफ ए पर्टिकुलर कल्चरल ग्रुप. तो हम सब में वो पर्सनालिटी तो होगी बिकॉज वी आर द पार्ट ऑफ द लार्जर ग्रुप. सो हियर ही ब्रिंग्स द आइडिया ऑफ कल्चर universals, culture specialist and culture alternatives. Okay, based on whether the status is shared by all, shared by or very few smaller segment of the society. So culture universal is that part of the culture which is shared by all. ठीक है, universal, that part of the culture that is shared by all. And culture specialist or specialization, that is that part of the culture that is shared by a small segment of the group. आप आईएएस बन जाओगे, only few people in the world or in India will become an IAS officer. You are a part of a culture specialist. या फिर आप बाद में MLA MP बन जाओ. Okay, that's a culture specialist. Or maybe priest, culture specialist. Here in this case teacher, culture specialist. यहाँ पे एक particular training होगी. Okay, so that is shared by segment of a particular society or a cultural group. Okay, now the third thing is culture alternatives. So here he says that a person means having, or two persons having same status may do their roles in different manner. एक और person at the same status might do his role in different manner at different instances. Okay, for example, me being a teacher and और भी आंध्रो के teachers हैं. So we all teach the same subject, but the pedagogy of teaching is different. Okay, so being a teacher, doing the role in different manner. Okay, second is being a teacher, being at the same position, individual can also do his role differently. So okay, for example, as a son, तो एक बार आप अपने फादर को आप अपने फादर की सारी बातें मानोगे, जो वो बोलेंगे वो सब करोगे. ओके, रिस्पेक्टफुली सुनोगे उनसे. अभी आपको आपके फादर चार लोगों के सामने डांट भी दे तो आप सुन लोगे, आप कुछ उनको रिस्पॉन्ड बैक नहीं करोगे, राइट? But other case, take other case. Suppose karo your father is ill and doctor has restricted him to not to consume sugar. But फिर भी वो एक पार्टी में जाते हैं and he is without any tension consuming sugar, जो कि उनके लिए fatal हो सकती है, deadly हो सकती है. Won't you scold your father? क्या आपको डॉक्टर ने मना किया है ना, क्यों कर रहे हो? Okay, won't you be strict to your father? Both the times you are doing the role of a son or a child. But one instance, you basically respect your father, you basically can hear whatever he says, irrespective of whether he is correct or not, in front of the people, just to maintain his respect. At the same time, other way round, you can show your love to your father, your care to your father, by scolding him, by restricting him from doing certain kind of activities which might be fatal to his life. Okay, the role is being done differently by the same individual occupying the same status, or some individuals might occupy the same status, might do their roles differently. That is called as culture alternative. Okay, there are multiple recognized ways to do the same role belonging to a status. So everybody can be a teacher, but not everybody will be teaching in an alike manner. They will have their own ways of teaching. That is the recognized culture alternative. लेकिन वो culture alternative का मतलब है कि वो socially acceptable है. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि teacher might come in the class and start dancing, pole dance नहीं करेगा वो. Okay, that's not what is expected of a teacher. Okay, so that is culture alternatives is what is culturally recognized, but different ways of doing the roles associated with a particular status. Okay, so here यहाँ पे अब आप देखो कि one aspect of the culture will be shared by all, and this aspect of the culture, he says, कि irrespective of आपका status specialized हो या universalized हो, but one aspect of the culture will be shared by all the members in the society or in a cultural group, and this culture universal actually creates what is called as a shared personality group, that is basic personality. One aspect of the culture will be shared by all, and this will create a shared personality group among all the members of the society, and this is called as the basic personality. Okay. So here he is saying that each society has some basic process by which all the members of the society experience similar child rearing practices. तो आप बाद में टीचर बन जाओगे, आप बाद में आईएएस बन जाओगे, आप बाद में प्रेसिडेंट बन जाओगे, वो अलग बात है. लेकिन बचपन में जो वैल्यू सिस्टम है वो आपको सेम दी जाएगी. आप सबको रामायण सिखाई जाएगी, आप सबको श्रवण कुमार के बारे में बताया जाएगा, आप सबको जो माइथोलॉजिकल और जो वैल्यू सिस्टम है वो सेम दी जा रही है. वो तो बाद में आपके अलग एक्सपीरियंसेस हो जाते हैं एंड यू टेक डिफरेंट पाथ इवन इन द सेम फैमिली आल्सो. ओके, द सोशलाइजेशन, द चाइल्ड rearing practices was one and the same, but later on because of your differential experiences or uniqueness you might take up some different roles. आपका भाई might become an artist and you, or maybe a film star, and you might be preparing for civil services. Okay, so but the child rearing practices, this is culture universal, that is shared by all, and this will lead to formation of basic personality. Okay, ये वाला पार्ट आप लिख लो. Each society has basic culture, by which all members experience similar processes of socialization. All members experience similar process of socialization and share and share similar customs, belief, and tradition. This creates a shared personality form, in bracket basic personality, among all the individuals. Shared personality form, basic personality among all the individuals. The same basic personality appears into different forms of behavior. That is culture alternatives. You might have same basic personality, आपके भाई और आपकी, but अलग अलग institutions में आप जाओगे अलग अलग तरीके से behave करोगे. That is the alternative. So shared by all basic personality, and just because आप अलग अलग status में जाओगे, अलग अलग roles में जाओगे, so this you will actually shape up the secondary institutions. So he says that these all institutions which are responsible for child rearing, जो सब कोई share करेगा, that is called as the primary institution, which will shape up the basic personality, which in turn will shape up the secondary institution. ठीक है, primary institution shaping up the basic personality, which will shape up the. तो यहाँ पे क्रक्स उनका यही था कि देखो आप एक कल्चर में हो, एक कल्चर का एक ऐसा पार्ट है, आप अलग अलग स्टेटस को ऑक्यूपाई करोगे, अलग अलग रोल परफॉर्म करोगे, कोई बात नहीं, बट एक ऐसा पार्ट है दैट विल बी शेयर्ड बाय ऑल द पीपल, एंड दैट पार्ट ऑफ द कल्चर इज व्हाट ही कॉल्स एज कल्चर यूनिवर्सल, and it is related with the child rearing practice. Okay, since the child rearing practice is same values is being inculcated in every individual, they will form the same basic personality, which in turn will shape up the secondary institutions of the culture. Okay, so ये basic idea था. I'll talk about the case study once I talk about the another scholar Abraham Gardiner, जिनके साथ उनकी collective case studies थी. Okay, इनकी कोई दोनों ने जो case studies की हैं, दोनों ने same societies में की. हाँ क्या? हाँ, पर थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट है, मतलब अब्राहम कार्डिनर का पूछा जाएगा तो उन्होंने कल्चर यूनिवर्सल और ये सब आइडिया नहीं यूज करके दूसरा आइडिया यूज किया. जस्ट लिसन. Abraham Gardiner. So Gardiner was a doctor who later on became a student of Sigmund Freud. तो Sigmund Freud में basically id ego super ego वाला आइडिया था. So he became more focused upon this part of the brain. मतलब id super ego ये सब बकवास चीज है, ईगो के बारे में बात करते हैं. That is where the leisure and the norms they basically intersect. मतलब ईगो is the functional part of the brain, जहाँ पे हम लोग को बताया जाता है कि इस तरीके से बिहेव करना है, ऐसे नहीं करना है. लीजर, लग्जरी, ये सब चीजें इस लेवल तक होनी चाहिए, इसके बियॉन्ड गलत है. Okay, that is the ego part of the brain that combines both id and super ego, integrates id and super ego. So here Gardiner actually says that we all are, or an individual is living under social and environmental exigencies or constraints. ठीक है, मतलब कुछ सोशल एनवायरमेंट कंट्रोल है या सोशल एनवायरमेंट फोर्सेस हैं जिसके अंदर में इंडिविजुअल रह रहा है. एंड नाउ दिस सोशल एंड एनवायरमेंटल exigencies put certain constraints on that individual or activities of that individual. Okay, now these constraints are institutionalized. That means अब कुछ environmental restrictions हैं, कुछ social restrictions हैं which has been institutionalized. That means you have to follow it. Institutionalization means they have become formal. Okay, so for example आप किसी एरिया में रह रहे हो तो वहां पे पानी की कमी, मान लो डेजर्ट एरिया, तो वो एनवायरमेंटल कंस्ट्रेंट हो गया, अब पानी कम यूज करना है, बचा बचा के यूज करना है, बहुत वेस्ट नहीं करना है. तब इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइजेशन का मतलब एनी एक्टिविटी that is leading to wastage of water will be prohibited, will be considered to be tabooed, will be considered to be unholy, something like that, isn't it? So that is, and every person is living under some kind of environmental and social restrictions, or these constraints, they have been institutionalized. Institutionalization of these constraints generate certain values. ठीक है, and these values are basically inculcated in the mind of the child, or it's basically fed into the child's mind during child rearing practices. मतलब बच्चे को सिखाया जाएगा ताकि वो environmental restrictions को follow कर सके. Okay, these values will be and this मतलब child rearing practices यहाँ से बनी. Okay, or primary institutions, and this will create basic personality of the child, or basic personality of the individual. Environmental constraint था और वो constraint institutionalize हुआ, उस institutionalization से कुछ values बनी, उस values को child के दिमाग में डाला गया कि भाई तुझे ऐसे रहना है. Okay, that will shape up the basic personality. Now these restrictions which have been imposed on the child will create certain frustrations. यार पानी क्यों नहीं यूज कर सकते? Okay, and these frustrations will lead to shaping up the secondary institution. Okay, कुछ environmental constraints हैं और उस constraints, since these have been institutionalized for the survival of the society, so these values will be inculcated into the mind of the child by child rearing practices. ठीक है, this will create the basic personality which actually creates some kind of frustration in the individual कि भाई क्यों नहीं कर सकते, बहुत सारे restrictions हैं, ये है वो है, and this frustration will shape up the secondary institution. Again the idea is primary institution shaping up the basic personality, but यहाँ पे he is basically linking it with the constraints that are put upon the individual because of some kind of environmental restrictions or maybe some kind of social restrictions. Okay, and since they will be institutionalized, they will generate some values जिसको बच्चे के दिमाग में बचपन में ही डाल दिया जाएगा कि ये करना सही है, ये गलत है, ईगो को ट्रेन किया जा रहा है. Okay, so this child rearing practices are primary institution, और child rearing practices को किसने shape किया? This environmental constraint. Okay, this basically will shape up the basic personality which will create certain frustrations which will be solved by, or which will shape up the secondary institution. Now let's see the case study that was collectively, means ये data collect किया था राल्फ लिंटन ने, फिर इसकी psychological understanding दी अब्राहम कार्डिनर ने और राल्फ लिंटन दोनों ने. They worked together for some time, but this case was, the field work was done by Ralph Linton only, but psychological interpretation was done by Abraham Gardner and Ralph Linton collectively. तो अगर अब्राहम कार्डिनर आता है तो भी आप ये स्टडी मेंशन करोगे, राल्फ लिंटन आता है तो भी आप यही स्टडी मेंशन करोगे. तो मार्केशंस में क्या है? देयर इज कंडीशन ऑफ स्टार्वेशन ड्यू टू फूड डेफिसिट. ठीक है, now due to food deficit, now which actually lead to फीमेल इन्फेंटिसाइड. अब आप ये समझो ये क्या है, ये एनवायरमेंटल कंस्ट्रेंट्स है. ओके, नाउ फीमेल इन्फेंटिसाइड की वजह से क्या है? शॉर्टेज ऑफ वुमेन. The ratio of men is to women is 5:2. For every 5 men, there is 2 women only. Okay. Now, shortage of women here in this case leads to polyandry. This is the primary institution. Polyandry means women having multiple husbands. Now, polyandry की वजह से, since a woman is having multiple husbands, there is cultural emphasis on maintaining erotic beauty, so that if एक woman के multiple husband है, in that case she have to maintain herself, she has to maintain the beauty in order to be attractive or pleasing to every man, right? तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने बताया कि एक ब्यूटी पार्लर टाइप का है, तो most of the women spend their most of the time in the day in this beauty parlor or some kind of salon, where in order to maintain their beauty so that they remain attractive to other husbands or all the husbands equally. So cultural emphasis on erotic beauty or maintenance of erotic beauty of every woman, and this is basically accompanied by a corresponding de-emphasis on mother-child relation. Since most of the time is spent in maintaining the beauty for other husbands, in that case she does not get time to nurture the child, to breastfeed the child. That is, mother-child relation is broken down. Okay, so this actually both they create frustration and longingness among children. Since they are not getting mother's care, that creates frustration and longingness among children, and there is a shared hatred towards women. ओके, तो एनवायरमेंटल एक्सिजेंसीज आपने देखा, उसकी वजह से पॉलीएंड्री एज एन इंस्टीट्यूशन बना, जिसकी वजह से एक बेसिक पर्सनालिटी बन रही है. ओके, एंड दिस बेसिक पर्सनालिटी विल एक्चुअली लीड टू पोर्ट्रेयल ऑफ वुमेन as wicked, evil, seductress, and cannibal in myth and folklore. सेकेंडरी इंस्टीट्यूशन, ठीक है. So you can see फूड डेफिसिट था, एनवायरमेंटल कंस्ट्रेंट, जिसकी वजह से प्राइमरी इंस्टीट्यूशन मतलब फीमेल इन्फेंटिसाइड हुआ, पॉलीएंड्री द प्राइमरी इंस्टीट्यूशन. ओके, जिसकी वजह से ये प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही थी, which actually shaped the basic personality of this, which actually in turn shaped the secondary institution. Okay, a similar work was the study of Tanala tribes of Madagascar. So here, Tanala tribes basically engaged in shifting cultivation, और ये नॉन कॉलोनियल टाइम की बात है, शिफ्टिंग कल्टीवेशन करते थे, बहुत ज़्यादा लैंड था और आराम से शिफ्ट मतलब अपना अपना एरिया ऑक्यूपाई करेंगे, उस पर शिफ्टिंग कल्टीवेशन करेंगे, फिर दूसरे लैंड पे चले जाएंगे. सो दिस इज एनवायरमेंटल कंडीशंस और कंस्ट्रेंट्स, आप समझ सकते हो. लैंड वाज इन सरप्लस, कोई टेंशन नहीं थी. ओके, एंड द फैमिली वाज जॉइंट फैमिली and economy was collectively controlled. And in this case, son had to inherit, or son had a lot of things to inherit from father in terms of property, money and all that stuff. The son had a lot of things to, well, condition was peaceful, बढ़िया थी. The son had father. Okay, so this is what is called as, this is the environmental conditions, this is the primary institution. Okay, so primary institution mainly आपकी कौन सी होगी, that is related to child rearing and subsistence activities will be primary institution as per Ralph Linton and Gardner. Okay, so son had a lot of things to inherit from father, and that's why the relationship or the attitude of son towards father was respectful. This is the basic personality. फादर सन का रिलेशनशिप पीसफुल है, फादर को रिस्पेक्टफुल तरीके से देखा जा रहा है. ओके, और इसी तरीके से दे वर ट्रेन्ड आल्सो टू हैव रिस्पेक्टफुल एटीट्यूड टुवर्ड्स फादर. ठीक है, नाउ द secondary institution is ancestor worship, in which ancestral spirits were seen as benevolent in nature. मतलब फादर सन रिलेशन बढ़िया है. अब इसी से सेकेंडरी इंस्टीट्यूशन जो वर्शिप, जो मिथ एंड स्टोरीज हैं, एंसेस्टर वर्शिप है, वो भी शेप अप हो रही है. एंसेस्टर स्पिरिट्स आर सीन टू बी बेनेवलेंट. ठीक है, बट व्हाट एक्चुअली हैपेंड as the Tanala area got colonized, okay, तो शिफ्टिंग कल्टीवेशन धीरे धीरे रोक दी गई, एंड दे शिफ्टेड टू wet rice cultivation, which led to economic insecurity. And economic insecurity आई, so joint family broke down. And in such scenario, nothing to be, or nothing much to be inherited from father. ऐसा ही नहीं तो देंगे क्या? In that scenario, the relationship between father and son became hostile. Okay, वो respectful relation था, basic personality, hostile relation between father and son, environmental constraints, institutionalized, basic personality, which actually led to ancestral spirits seen as malevolent in nature. कि ancestral spirits worship तो करते थे, but to prevent themselves from the wrath of the ancestor, कि crops ना destroy कर दें. Okay, so ancestral spirits were seen to be malevolent. Attitude actually changed. Okay, क्योंकि basic personality change हुआ and the attitude changed. So secondary institution. Okay, so this is the basic idea of Ralph Linton and Abraham Cardinal. ठीक है, primary institutions shapes basic personality, shape secondary institutions. Now the next one, एक साथ इनका तीनों का एक साथ देखेंगे, कोरा डुबोई, क्योंकि इनका बेसिक आइडिया सेम है, प्राइमरी इंस्टीट्यूशन शेपिंग अप बेसिक और मॉडल पर्सनालिटी एंड ओके. So this Cora Dubois, she was a student of Kroeber and then Gardner. ठीक है. तो what happened? Kroeber से anthropology सीखी, Gardner से psychology सीखी. And since he was not getting any job, तो वो Gardner से psychology सीखने लगी and then Gardner arranged for a field work for Cora Dubois in Indonesian island called as Alora. So she wrote a book named The People of Alora, okay, in which she has talked about a idea somewhat different from Gardner and Ralph Linton, that is called as modal personality. Remember, it's not model personality, it's a modal personality, derived from the word mean, mode, median. आपने सुना है statistics में? So that mode word, mode, mean, mode, median आपने पढ़ा है? तो mode क्या होता है? The most repeated variable is called as the mode. Okay, तो अगर आपके पास एक सैंपल है जिसमें 6 बहुत बार रिपीट हुआ है तो 6 becomes the mode. So modal personality is a improvement on the idea of basic personality. Basic personality उन्होंने बोला कि कल्चर यूनिवर्सल से बनती है जो सबको ही शेयर करता है, इस वजह से बेसिक पर्सनालिटी भी सबको ही शेयर करेगा. इन्होंने बोला कि बेसिक पर्सनालिटी डज नॉट अलाउज फॉर द वेरिएशंस ऑफ इंडिविजुअल्स इन द सोसाइटी and that's why an improvement to this idea will be modal personality, that is the personality shared by majority, not all of the individuals in the society, and that's why the name modal. तो आप इसको मॉडल मत लिखना, ओके, जिससे ये समझ में आता है कि आपने वो कंसेप्ट को समझा ही नहीं. it's modal, that is the personality shared by majority, not all. Okay, so she says that yes, there is a personality shared by majority of the people, or shared by the same cultural aspects of the people in the society, but not by all, but by majority. So she is giving a new idea without weakening the idea of Ralph Linton and Gardner, just उसको improvise कर रही हैं. Yes, कुछ part child rearing practices shared हैं, तो इस वजह से she will there is a type of personality that will be shared by majority of the people. Okay, now what she did here in Alora, she went here and she collected a lot of data. ठीक है, पहले उनकी लैंग्वेज सीखी, that is the language is Abui, and when she learned their language, she collected data like children's dream and drawing. Then biography or history of life history of 8 people, and then she conducted some kind of psychological test known as Rorschach और thematic perception test, और जिसको इंक ब्लॉट टेस्ट भी कहा जाता है. थीमेटिक परसेप्शन टेस्ट एंड इंक ब्लॉट टेस्ट. तो थीमेटिक परसेप्शन टेस्ट क्या है? बेसिकली आपको एक रैंडम इमेज दिखा दी जाएगी एंड उसमें से देखने को बोला जाएगा कि भाई आप इसमें से क्या परसीव करते हो. फॉर एग्जाम्पल लाइक चाइल्डहुड में जो हमारे गेम्स होते थे क्लाउड्स को देखने के, कि उस बादल को देख, और कोई आपका दोस्त बोलेगा कि उसमें मेरे को शेर दिख रहा है, उसमें मेरे को हिरन दिख रही है. ओके, दैट इज द सेम क्लाउड बट एवरी अदर इंडिविजुअल इज परसीविंग समथिंग डिफरेंट आउट ऑफ इट. Now that it's a very random image. That is what is called as thematic perception test. And Rorschach और Inkblot का क्या है? ये एक फिल्टर पेपर लेंगे और एक पेपर ऐसे, उसके ऊपर एक ड्रॉप ऑफ इंक डाल देंगे and the ink will spread in very random manner. Now that random ink blot will be shown to every individual. और उसे बेसिस पे पूछा जाएगा कि तुमने क्या देखा उसमें, कौन सी, किसी को उसमें कुछ और दिख रहा है, किसी में उसको डेथ दिख रही है, कुछ दिख रहा है, वॉट एवर दिस, तो दैट इज कॉल्ड एज रोरशास और इंक ब्लॉट टेस्ट. तो ये सारे टेस्ट कंडक्ट कराए, and whatever data that she got, she sent it to 3 different persons. So this was sent to Trude Schmidt, this was sent to Abraham Cardinal, and this was sent to Emily Oberholzer. But interesting part ये है कि इन तीनों में से किसी को नहीं पता था कि somebody else is doing a kind of research. These three were blind participant of that research study. तो एमिल ओबरहॉजलर को बस ये पता था कि मेरे पास कुछ डेटा आया है जो मुझे इसके बारे में कुछ एनालिसिस करना है. She was not aware कि that Krober has got some other data और Trude Schmidt has got some other data and vice versa. किसी को नहीं पता था कि ये बाकी दोनों भी इसमें कोई रिसर्च करें. This was completely blind. So that ये तीनों एक दूसरे से बात करके अपने ओपिनियन को चेंज ना करते या इन्फ्लुएंस ना करते. Okay, so they were completely doing blind research and they all were sent their data to go for psychoanalysis of this allories. बोले कि आप बताओ कि इस डेटा से what kind of personality that you can find, मतलब इनको आप उनकी पर्सनालिटी को कैसे समझ रहे हो, इनकी क्या पर्सनालिटी होगी. And to her surprise, everyone came with the same answer. Everyone said that, means सबने क्या बोला कि that allories have a shallow and low emotional personality. Okay, they have deep insecurity, apathy and suspiciousness. Okay, so this is what she says is the model personality of the allories. अब ऐसा क्या है वहां पे कि मॉडल पर्सनालिटी ऐसी है, लेट्स सी दैट. ये लिख लिया आप. So here in this case, in case of allories, what we found that the vegetable or the food supply is controlled by women, and it is here in this case what actually happens कि जो women हैं, they basically are expected to be on the field just 15 or 20 days after delivery. मतलब 15 से 20 दिन बाद they are expected to be on the field. Okay, so this is the kind of passion that women have towards agriculture or towards the field, and due to which, since women are supposed to be on the field just 20 days after delivery, the children, they do not get much time to take care of the children. So children are taken care by siblings और older siblings. ठीक है, बड़े भाई बहन उनका ध्यान रखते हैं, and they are not getting much care, love, empathy from the mother. This basically creates frustration among the children. Frustration among children, and due to lack of motherly care, they lack self-confidence and self-esteem. Okay, and they are unable sustain love or friendship. मतलब वो अपने आप को किसी रिलेशनशिप में इन्वेस्ट ही नहीं करना चाहते. They do not फील दैट कि ये रिलेशनशिप में अपने आप को इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, इमोशनली कनेक्ट मीन्स बचपन से ही, क्योंकि कोई ऐसा लव केयर वैसा कुछ मिला ही नहीं, एंड दैट्स व्हाई दे डू नॉट हैव दैट काइंड ऑफ इमोशन, सिंपैथी और इस टाइप की कुछ भी फीलिंग. ओके, सो दिस इज द मॉडल पर्सनालिटी. मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल्स में ऐसा आपको दिखेगा, एंड ड्यू टू विच यू विल फाइंड द सेकेंडरी इंस्टीट्यूशन shaped. So here, so they do not have regular worship or no idealization of a deity. मतलब वो किसी भी रिलेशनशिप में अपने आप को इन्वेस्ट नहीं करते, तो किसी भगवान को भी वो परमानेंटली नहीं मान रहे कि आप ही मेरे सब कुछ हो, और इस टाइप की जो कंप्लीट डिवोशन जैसा कुछ भी नहीं है. तो नो आइडियलाइजेशन ऑफ डेटी और सैक्रिफाइसेस, प्रेयर्स, ऑफरिंग्स, दे बेसिकली इज इन केस ऑफ एक्सट्रीम कंडीशन. जब चीजें एकदम ही ज्यादा एक्सट्रीम हो जाएंगी, देन चलो ठीक है अब ये भी करके देख लेते हैं टाइप वैसा है. ओके, नथिंग लाइक दैट कि भगवान से रेगुलर कम्युनिकेट कर रहे हैं या कुछ ऐसा कर रहे हैं. नथिंग ऑफ दैट सेट. को परमानेंस ऑफ रिलेशनशिप इज नॉट. However, there is no concept of forgiveness. So, because relationship is not that important, so anybody who does anything wrong will be punished for eye to an eye. Okay. So, no concept of forgiveness. So, this is the modal personality because of the primary institution, modal personality, and the secondary institution. This is the idea of Cora de Boer. Clear hai? Now, the criticism. So here in criticism, major criticism सबसे पहला ये है कि primary institutions have been restricted only to child rearing. बोला कि उसका और कोई काम ही नहीं है, बस child rearing तक रख दिया. Okay, primary institution functions have been restricted only to child rearing practices. Okay, second बोला कि personality is shaped only by childhood experience, ऐसा बोल रहे हैं. But this is incorrect. Lifetime experiences shapes up the personality even when you were adult. The moment you start preparing for civil services and within few years, your personality definitely changes. Moreover, आप IAS बनने से पहले और IAS बनने के बाद आपकी personality एक जैसी नहीं रहेगी. Definitely there is मतलब वो बहुत बड़ा चेंज आ जाता है. अरविंद केजरीवाल is the best example. आप देखो कि जब वो प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे थे और प्रोटेस्ट के बाद okay when he became the chief minister, तो personality तो पूरी चेंज हो गई. Okay, so the personality is not shaped up only by the childhood experiences, but lifetime experiences changes the or shapes up the personality. Okay, now the third thing is they cannot account for or explain the differences in primary institution across different cultures. Why in the very first place different primary institutions are there? Okay, so child rearing practices अलग-अलग क्यों हैं ये नहीं बताया. Okay, next they actually try to portray society as a homogeneous entity. मतलब they are basically not recognizing the variety among the individuals in the society. Society as a homogeneous entity. Okay, so these are some major criticism. Now, the applied aspect of culture personality, it is national characteristic. Culture personality या फिर basic personality का जो rule है, that is used for understanding the national character. मतलब जो basic personality क्या बोला कि child rearing practices same होंगी, इस वजह से एक particular personality type develop हो जाएगा पूरे cultural group में, and उसी के basis पे वो ये idea आ गया कि नेशनल लेवल पे सिंस मोर और लेस अगर नेशन मतलब आप समझ रहे हो, इट्स नॉट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट स्टेट बट नेशन. So nation is a group of people who are politically conscious and having the same culture. ठीक है. State is a group of people living in a territory and having a sovereign government. Okay. तो एक territory है, sovereign government है. अब जब nation और state combine करते हैं, that is group of people politically conscious, same having same culture, having a territory with a sovereign government, it is called as a nation state. ठीक है. So there can be a state without nation. There can be nation without state. Okay, so nation without state Khalistan. Okay, और state without nation अमेरिका, क्योंकि एक सिंगल कल्चरल ग्रुप नहीं रहता वहां पे, हेट्रोजेनिटी है पूरी. इंडिया क्या है? नेशन स्टेट या नेशन या स्टेट? हाँ, स्टेट. इंडिया इज a state nation. This is the basic idea. State nation, that is a state moving towards nationhood. Okay, a state moving towards nationhood, that is saffronization अगर कहो, या फिर एक homogeneity की तरफ जा रहा है. That is state moving towards nation. This is not me speaking about it. It's scholars like Satish Deshpande and several other scholars. They say India is a state nation, state aspiring nationhood. ठीक है. अब जैसे कि UCC is the best example for it. Okay, Universal Civil Code, Uniform Civil Code, sorry. तो अगर ऐसा हो जाएगा तो यहाँ पे जो डाइवर्सिटी है, at least with respect to the marital practices, I'm not talking about that minority majority religion के, उनका तो चलता रहेगा. Okay, what about the true minorities or the marginalized minority who do not have the voices to speak on the platform, like the tribal people? अब यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड आ गया तो फिर वो उनका क्या होगा? उनकी जो मैरिटल प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, उनके जो बहुत सारे और प्रैक्टिसेस हैं प्रॉपर्टी इनहेरिटेंस की लेके, वो सब कहाँ चली जाएंगी? ओके, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट ओनली रिलेटेड टू मैरिज, इट्स रिलेटेड टू अ लॉट ऑफ अदर थिंग्स ऑल्सो. ठीक है, जैसे कि हिंदुइज्म में हिंदू सिविल कोड के हिसाब से जो हिंदू मैरिज कोड आया था नेहरू के टाइम पे, तो वहां पे एक हम लोग को एक एडवांटेज और मिला. हम लोग मीन्स सी ऑल द इंडिक रिलीजन, दे वर collectively considered as administratively they are considered to be Hindus only. They Hindu, Sikh, Buddha, Jain. Okay, no, not Parsi. Okay, so in this case, Hindu, undivided family HUF का एक एडवांटेज आया, जिसमें बेसिकली कई सारे टैक्स बेनिफिट्स मिले जॉइंट फैमिलीज को. दिस HUF provision is not available to Muslim or Christians. Okay, so a lot of tax benefits that has been reaped not only now but जितने सारे traders communities हैं उनकी families से HUF का benefit उन लोग को बहुत ज्यादा मिल रहा है. ठीक है, अब जब ये यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड आएगा, this HUF benefit will be taken away. Okay, that and और भी बहुत सारे और भी चेंजेस आएंगे. इनहेरिटेंस के दया भाग में ताक्षर, ये जो इनहेरिटेंस वो चलता है तो वो भी चेंज होगा. एंड ऐसे इनहेरिटेंस प्रैक्टिसेस are different kinds of inheritance practices that are followed among the tribals. वो भी change होगी because uniform civil code आएगा. Okay, although this is something, although it should not be spoken on this platform, but ये थोड़ा सा political gimmick है और ये अभी नहीं चलेगा. ये 2023 में आने का reason ही ये था, या अगले साल election. Okay, so this is something that has been highlighted. It will go on for 10-15 years, and maybe 10-15 years down the line, you might see something concrete that is going on ground in form civil code. ठीक है, but what we are trying to say is कि some practices that will be followed by all and that will shape up the basic personality of the people living in a nation, and that is called as the national characteristic or national character. And this idea was derived from the culture personality school, in which they say that people belonging to the same cultural group, since they have same or similar child rearing or socialization practices, that will shape up the similar personality type of the people living in a particular nation. Okay, और similar administrative experience, क्योंकि एक ही constitution है, एक ही law book को आप follow कर रहे हो, and all that will shape up the same personality, and this is called as the national character. Now this idea was actually taken up by American government or Office of War Information during Second World War. they hired Ruth Benedict to study Japanese. बोला कि आप देखो कि what is the reason for their resilience. Actually, America was मतलब not very much eager to participate in Second World War. बोला कि नहीं करें. But Pearl Harbor attack, kamikazes. Okay, these fighter pilots, they were very much like adamant. They knew that कि उनके पास जितना तेल है उससे वो एक तरफा ही जा पाएंगे, वापस नहीं आ पाएंगे. But still they took that risk and they acted as a suicide bomber because they knew that nobody is going to come back. But still they attacked Pearl Harbor. And America was completely shocked that these trained pilots with so good jobs and good respect, good money, why did they actually took this risk knowing that no one is going to come back. Okay, so that's why US Office of War Information actually hired Ruth Benedict. बोला कि अब study करो Japanese. What's the reason for their resilience? Okay, and Ruth Benedict, since America was in war with Japan, she could not go there and conduct any kind of field work. तो उन्होंने क्या किया कि कुछ biographies ली. She also collected some interviews from prisoners of war from Japan, certain bureaucrats who have basically worked in Japan, who has gone to Japan, has stayed there for a longer period, certain traders or certain literary accounts. ये सब को लेने के बाद she wrote a book, the name The Chrysanthemum and the Sword. उन्होंने बताया this child rearing practices actually is responsible for creating double types of personality or two distinct types of personality at different instances. So when the child is born, he or she will be treated like a flower, that is the national flower chrysanthemum. Okay, so उसको बहुत ज़्यादा care मिलेगी, बहुत ज़्यादा pampering मिलेगी, बहुत ज़्यादा love, respect and all that will be. So he or she blooms like a flower, chrysanthemum. Okay, but as soon as he or she reaches puberty, strict discipline is imposed upon him. Strict discipline. Okay, and it's just like a sharp sword hanging on the head of the child. मतलब इतना strict discipline होता है कि कुछ गलती करोगे and that the sword will fall down. So that is the kind of discipline, and they have to manage their bed, they have to get up, and they are honor bound to their emperors. ठीक है कि एक बार राजा ने कुछ बोल दिया तो करना होगा, मतलब उसमें डेथ लाइफ और कुछ, इट्स लाइक ऑनर बाउंड, मतलब वो करना ही अपने आप में सबसे बड़ा ऑनर है लाइफ का. दे आर ऑनर बाउंड टू देयर पेरेंट्स एंड बियॉन्ड देम टू द एम्परर ऑफ जापान. मतलब वहां से जो आदेश आएगा वो फाइनल करेंगे ही करेंगे. ओके, एंड दिस इज द रीजन व्हाई द जापानीज सोल्जर्स डेवलप रेजिलियंस, द काइंड ऑफ देयर चाइल्डहुड ट्रेनिंग. ठीक है, क्राइसेंथेमम एंड द स्वॉर्ड. नाउ द नेक्स्ट वन, Margaret Mead. So she wrote a book, Keep Your Powder Dry. An anthropologist looks at America. आप ये first phrase ही याद रख सकते हो, keep your powder dry, in which she compares the national character of American, Japanese and Russian children. So here in this case, what she says that American, Japanese and Russian children, they have similar personality till the formal education begins. मतलब क्योंकि जब तक घर पे रहते हैं, जब तक मदर से केयरिंग हो रही है, तो they have similar personality till the formal education begins. The personality differences starts to begin after the formal education starts. Okay. तो उन्होंने बताया कि फॉर्मल एजुकेशन में जैसे अमेरिकन एजुकेशन है, वहां पे साइंस, कैपिटलिज्म, इस बारे में बात हो रही है. जापानीज एजुकेशन जो सिस्टम है, शी इज टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट कलेक्टिवनेस की बात करते हैं वो लोग. ओके, हायरार्की की बात नहीं करते, वो नेशनहुड को ज्यादा प्रमोट कर रहे हैं. तो वहां पे जैसे जापान में है कि दे हैव टू क्लीन देयर स्कूल्स, टॉयलेट्स by themselves, there is no cleaners. The children themselves will be dividing the responsibility between them. and they will clean it. So collective school की cleanliness is not based on school administration but the children themselves. Class cleanliness is not based on administration but the children. तो वो उनके ऊपर ओनस आ जाता है कि मेरी क्लास साफ है कि नहीं. So that is the collective ownership that they are taught about. Okay. ऐसे ही रशियन में, बोले रशिया में क्या है कि लीडर को ग्लोरीफाई किया जा रहा है एजुकेशन में और लीडर की तरफ लॉयल्टी है. तो आपको पुतिन तो सब नहीं था, स्टालिन, लेनिन एंड इन सब के बारे में बताया जा रहा है, उनको बेसिकली ग्लोरीफाई किया जा रहा है. तो आपकी जो लॉयल्टी इज नॉट टुवर्ड्स वैल्यू बट टुवर्ड्स द इंडिविजुअल लीडर्स. तो वहां से अलग आपकी पर्सनालिटी डेवलप हो रही है. ओके, तो दिस इज व्हाट दे आर सेइंग कि फॉर्मल एजुकेशन अलग अलग है जिसकी वजह से डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ पर्सनालिटी स्टार्ट्स टू डेवलप. ओके, देयर आर सेवरल अदर स्टडीज आल्सो. फॉर एग्जांपल जॉफरी गोरर, ये बहुत ही ज्यादा अच्छी स्टडी है. तो saying that swaddling, saying that Russians, they basically have a bit introvert personality and they follow the authority because बचपन में उनको बहुत टाइटली रैप किया जाता है कंबल में, जिसको swaddling कहते हैं, because they experience swaddling which restricts their movement in their childhood and that's why they develop such kind of personality. बचपन में बहुत टाइट रैप कर दिया इसलिए ऐसी पर्सनालिटी. So this is not to be quoted also, not. And there is another scholar, DeVos, who basically studied Japan and recovery of Japan post dropping of atom bombs. ठीक है, बोले कि 2 atom bomb गिरने के बाद Japan, a country which is not resourceful, was still able to recover in a very short period of time. What's the reason for this? उसने बोला कि the basic personality of the Japanese individual, in which hard work and guilt, they are internalized. मतलब कि हार्ड वर्क करना है बहुत ज्यादा, प्लस if the target is not achieved, the person will feel internal guilt. उसको बाहर से कोई नहीं इम्पोज करेगा. इंटरनल गिल्ट मतलब जो टारगेट सेट कर दिया वो करके रहना है, no matter what, and that's why they are very hard working plus having a feeling of internalized guilt, and due to which they were able to recover after such a big destruction. DeVos ka idea. Now all this was done. Now what is the relevance or significance of national character studies? First, foreign intelligence आज के टाइम पे. So with this intelligence, a country can basically coordinate its relationship with other countries. कि वहाँ का national character क्या है, वहाँ के लोगों का कैसा response आएगा on such and so behavior, whatever we do. Okay, that is for plus the dominant countries or the first world countries, they basically gather this information, खास करके इस Cold War के टाइम पे, so that they could influence the policies of these nations. Cold War के टाइम पे everybody was trying to attract कि ये हमारे जोन में आ जाए, ये कैपिटलिस्ट जोन में आ जाए, ये कम्युनिस्ट वाले में आ जाए. So they were doing this national character studies, especially America was doing it just to make sure that they give the policies or they basically give some offers that will have least resistance from the people for intelligence. Okay, then corporates. So in order to launch a product, whether that product will be accepted by the people, whether that will be in demand, not in demand, okay, तो उसके लिए national character चाहिए. Okay, so for example, like we have a faculty निशाद sir, तो उन्होंने एक revision notebook निकाली. अब उन्होंने देखा कि हर कोई short notes चाह रहा है, short notes चाह रहा है. That is the national character or say the basic personality of the students preparing for civil service. तो उन्होंने एक short notebook निकाल दी. That was in demand. Okay, so ऐसे corporate groups, they will be coming up with those products that are in demand. मतलब किस टाइप के मेजर डिजायर्स हैं, किस टाइप के कलर्स, इवन कलर ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट, द शेप ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट, द नेम ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट. ओके, दैट विल बी बेस्ड ऑन द बेसिक पर्सनालिटी ऑफ दैट पीपल जिसको केटर करना है वो प्रोडक्ट. ओके, देन इकोनॉमिकली डेवलप्ड नेशन, they basically try to go for national character studies to find out which of their cultural trait is बेनिफिशियल, जिसकी वजह से वो सक्सेसफुल हो पाए, जिसकी वजह से वो डेवलप्ड हो पाए, सो दैट दैट कल्चरल ट्रेट कैन बी मेंटेन्ड इन द सोसाइटी। उसको वो नर्चर करेंगे, उसको वो मेंटेन करेंगे, सो दैट वो डेवलप्ड रहें। एंड इकोनॉमिकली पुअरर नेशंस or underdeveloped nations, they will also go for national character studies to find out that personality traits which are responsible for their underdevelopment, ताकि उस पर कुछ काम किया जा सके। जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल द स्टार्टअप इंडिया प्रैक्टिस, तो इंडिया में जो राइट विंग गवर्नमेंट आएगी तो वो कैपिटलिज्म को प्रमोट करेगी। इंडियाज इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ इज स्टॉप, नीति आयोग का स्टेटमेंट इज दिस नॉट समथिंग, बिकॉज द मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द टैलेंट is not ready to take risk। बहुत talented लोग हैं and the majority of talent is getting wasted in government jobs because they are not ready to take the risk। IIT से पढ़ेंगे, IIM से पढ़ेंगे and then फिर किसी IAS या IRS बन जाएंगे, तो वो तो टैलेंट वेस्ट हो गया। इतना टाइम स्पेंड किया, इतनी एनर्जी वेस्ट की, इतना गवर्नमेंट फंड एम से पढ़ा, बट रिसर्च करने की जगह बेसिकली एंडेड अप लाइक इन गवर्नमेंट जॉब और समथिंग लाइक दैट। So that's why Startup India, to promote startup culture, entrepreneurship in India, okay, and also de-glorification of the government job, lateral entry को promote करेंगे वो, okay, and धीरे धीरे government job को unstable करते जाएंगे, so that majority of talent एक ecosystem भी create कर रहे हैं साथ साथ, at the same time जो government job है, जो stable jobs हैं, उसको थोड़ा थोड़ा de-glorify करेंगे और उसकी avenues को थोड़ा थोड़ा कम करेंगे। And what will happen? Gradually, there will be a shift, change in the mindset, and that will actually make sure that the individuals or the talent, they basically are ready to take some risk. Okay, entrepreneurship की तरफ जाएंगे। So these are some of the reasons why national character studies are conducted. Okay, or maybe policy making. That's an extension of the above two. तो ब्यूरोक्रेटाइजेशन करना है, इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन करना है, तो व्हाट हैज टू बी डन, बेसिक कैरेक्टर में वो लेके आना होगा। तो वो शुरू कर देते हैं स्कूलिंग से ही। तो 9 से 5 आपको स्कूल भेजेंगे, क्यों? क्योंकि 9 से 5 की तो आपकी जॉब लाइफ होने वाली है। दिस इज हाउ द स्कूल सिस्टम हैज बीन क्रिएटेड कि आप सुबह 8 बजे जाओ और 5 बजे वापस आओ, और उसके बाद ही आप खेलोगे। ओके, तो आओ स्कूल से, होमवर्क करो, एंड देन यू इवेंचुअली गेट फ्री बाय 5 to prepare you for that job system that you are supposed to do, the role that you are supposed to do when you grow up. Okay, so this is national character studies, its relevance. Now certain limitation. तो पहला है sometimes it leads to stereotype. Okay, एक general. Moreover, it basically tends to overgeneralize, ignores the variations, and also presents a static picture of society which is dynamic, change होता रहता है। ठीक है, तो दिस इज ऑल अबाउट कल्चर पर्सनालिटी। कल हम लोग क्लास में सिंबॉलिक इंटरप्रेटिव कर लेंगे, एंड see you tomorrow. That's it for today. Thank you so much.